Be the authority. A patient gets rushed into the ER, moaning in pain. Doctors and nurses swarm in. Frank stands there in a lab coat, looking like he wandered in from a Grey's Anatomy audition, just hoping no one calls his bluff. So he improvises, turns to a real doctor and says,
"Do you concur?"
The guy freezes, confused, no diagnosis, no context. But Frank doesn't flinch, just stares like he's testing him. Under pressure, the man folds and nods. Frank says nothing else, just turns away like he's running the place. That's how he survives, not by knowing the part, but by owning the room. Here's the science. Humans are hardwired to trust certainty. It's called confidence bias. If someone says something like they believe it, our monkey brains assume it must be true. Doesn't matter if it's wrong, if it sounds right, it sticks. That's how cult leaders, bad TED Talks, and 3 a.m. infomercials work. Frank pulls it off because he never hesitates. Hesitation is a tell, a glitch, a neon sign that says, I'm faking it. But if you answer quick, smooth, and throw in some jargon, you're golden. Say, we'll need a full workup with enough authority, and suddenly you're chief resident of pretend university hospital. It's not even about having the answers. It's about selling the illusion. Like when he faces down the FBI agent and coolly says,
"Relax! You're late, all right?"
No badge, no backup. Just pure confidence wrapped in a lie, but the delivery, flawless, calm, certain, just enough to make a federal agent pause. That's the trick. Speak first, question nothing. The moment you waver, people notice, but act like you belong, and suddenly you do. Don't memorize the lines. Own the stage. Dress like it matters. Frank doesn't just walk into Pan Am headquarters. He struts in wearing the uniform, the hat, and that shiny little pin like it's Excalibur. He's radiating pilot energy.
"I'm a co-pilot for Pan Am,"
he says casually, while every TSA agent collectively decides to stop thinking. See, clothes hack brains. Studies show that people treat you differently based on what you're wearing, even if nothing else changes. That's called enclothed cognition. A lab coat makes you look smarter. A suit makes you sound more convincing. A pilot uniform, instant respect, and free flights, apparently. Frank knows this. He mails in a form, gets a real pilot uniform, and suddenly, doors start opening. Literal airport doors. People let him on planes, into cockpits, and into their personal sense of reality.
If you can use...
You want to act like someone else? Dress the part so well that no one dares to question it. Add layers of credibility, clipboard, lanyard, ID badge with a random barcode. The outfit doesn't just sell the character, it silences doubts. Frank didn't know how to fly a plane, but he looked like he could. And in the real world, that's half the battle. As long as you look the part and don't try to land a 747, you're good. Speak their language. Mid-scam, Frank strolls up to the airline counter at the airport, trying to hitch a ride to Miami. He smiles and says,
"Yeah, I'm the deadhead."
To most people, that sounds vaguely threatening. But to airline staff, that's pilot speak for, I'm catching a ride, don't bother me. He's not just pretending to be a pilot, he's talking like one. And that's where the real magic happens. Every profession has its own lingo. Doctors say stat instead of now. Lawyers say jurisdiction instead of my turf. Tech bros say synergy when they mean we don't know what we're doing. The words don't just describe the job, they signal membership in the club. Frank doesn't say free flight, he says deadhead. Doesn't say the police are coming, he says
"LAPD should be here any sec."
The key to acting like someone else is learning their keywords. Just a few can get you in the door. Sprinkle them in like seasoning. Not too much, or you sound like a walking thesaurus. Just enough to pass. It's called register shifting, and it's backed by linguistic research. People naturally adjust their vocabulary and tone to fit in with different groups. You're already doing it with your boss, your friends, your dog. Frank just cranks it to 100 and weaponizes it. So the next time you want to fake a role, learn 5 key terms. Memorize them. Use them sparingly. You're not reciting a glossary, you're performing fluency. Throw in a few acronyms for bonus points. Everyone trusts acronyms. They sound like science. Lie with detail. There's a scene where Frank gets cornered by Carl Hanratty in a hotel room. It should be game over, but Frank doesn't flinch. Instead, he steps forward with total confidence.
"My name's Allen, Barry Allen, United States Secret Service."
He points out the window and calmly tells the local officer that the man outside is the real suspect. According to him, it's all part of an ongoing federal operation. These little details, they're all designed to overwhelm the moment with legitimacy, and it works. Carl hesitates, backs off, and while he's still processing the information, Frank slips out the front door like he belongs somewhere more important. When people lie, they tend to get vague. When Frank lies, he gets specific. He talks about routes, ranks, ID numbers, even says he's working on an article for Jetstream International Monthly. Is that even a real magazine? Who cares? It sounds real. Psychologists call this the verifiability effect. People are more likely to believe lies that include small, checkable facts. Frank doesn't just say, I'm a lawyer. He says,
"Before I went to medical school, I passed the bar in California."
Boom. Specific. Plausible. unverifiable in the moment. Perfect. It's the classic magician's trick. Don't just distract, overwhelm. Flood the senses with information, and people stop looking for holes. Frank even forges checks with bank logos, addresses, routing numbers, all of it legit looking enough to short-circuit suspicion. Credibility lives in the details. Add one oddly specific thing, not too flashy, just real enough to feel true. Say you're a NASA contractor, mention the badge policy at Langley. Pretending to be a professor, reference midterm grading spreadsheets. People trust specifics more than big claims. Frank wins not because he lies well, but because he lies like it's a resume. Read the room. Frank steps into the hotel suite, hears Cheryl Ann ask for $1,000 in cash for the whole night, and he doesn't flinch. He reads the room, sees she wants money fast, not questions, so he plays status, flashes a fake Pan Am cashier's check for $1,400 right in front of her. She's dazzled. Believing it's real, she offers to make change.
Why don't I give you back $400?
Handing him $400 in real cash for a worthless piece of paper, Frank kept calm, played along, and got exactly what he wanted, with a little extra cash as a bonus. Acting like anyone isn't just about faking credentials. It's about mirroring the environment. Behavioral psychology calls it social mimicry. We subconsciously copy the posture, speech, and vibe of those around us to blend in. Frank doesn't fight this. He masters it. With bank managers, he's sharp, numbers-focused, and just the right amount of smug. When he steps in as a last-minute French teacher, he grabs the chalk like he owns the place and starts rattling off verbs like he's been doing it for years.
Take your seats!
He tailors his character to each room he enters, like a social chameleon in designer shoes. Don't just rehearse a script, adapt, mirror. Listen more than you talk at first. Humans trust people who seem familiar, who reflect them back like a social selfie. Frank never just walks in, he feels his way in. That's what makes the lie believable. Not just what he says, but how he listens before he says it. Think fast, lie faster. Frank's sitting at the dinner table with Brenda's family, doing what he does best, adapting. He's already clocked that her father is a district attorney, so he leans into the role, claiming he studied law at UC Berkeley, the same school where her dad once taught. Big mistake. The father smiles politely, then casually asks what the professor's dog's name was. It's not small talk, it's bait, a test, a hyper-specific detail meant to trip him up. Most people would panic or fumble for a name. Frank doesn't. He pauses just long enough to sell sincerity, then says,
The dog was dead.
Brenda's dad backs off and the conversation moves on. That's the power of quick thinking. Not spinning some elaborate story, but saying just enough to make the lie feel too uncomfortable to question. Studies in cognitive psychology show that under pressure, the brain shifts into what's called System 1 thinking, fast, instinctive, emotional. Most people freeze or overcompensate, trying to fill silence with explanations, but research suggests that short, emotionally charged responses are far more convincing than long, logical ones, especially when time is tight. So hold eye contact, think fast, and keep your lie simple. The best answers aren't clever, they're believable. Believe your own script. At some point, Frank stops faking and starts living it. At a preliminary hearing with no jury and no defendant, he still plays the part of a hotshot lawyer, tossing out objections like it's a courtroom drama. The judge finally cuts him off.
What in the hell is wrong with you?
This isn't just lying anymore, it's self-reinvention. And guess what? That actually works. Studies show that the more you act out a role, the more your brain rewires to believe it. It's called self-perception theory. We infer who we are based on what we do. Fake it long enough and your brain goes, oh cool, I guess this is me now. Frank doesn't get caught because he slips up. He gets caught because the identity became his comfort zone. To truly act like someone else, you can't just play the role. You need to emotionally buy into it. That doesn't mean losing touch with reality, but it does mean committing harder than a Netflix actor with a 6-episode arc. Frank walks, talks, eats, and even flirts like he's the real deal. So if you're gonna pretend, do it method style. Wake up in the role, learn their habits, routines, caffeine order. You don't need to be a sociopath. You just need to believe your performance before anyone else can. Know when to quit. Frank's facade starts to crack when Brenda's father asks him point blank who he really is. For a second, Frank hesitates. Then, no more lies.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer.
He finally drops the act and says the only truth that matters. He loves Brenda. It isn't a dramatic twist. It's a survival instinct. Because here's the thing about being someone else. It's exhausting. You're constantly scanning, adjusting, improvising, lying, and keeping a mental database of every detail you've ever fabricated. Research calls this cognitive load. The more lies you tell, the more brain power you burn trying to keep them straight. Liars literally perform worse on memory tests, decision-making tasks, and, surprise, long-term happiness. Frank hit that wall. All the suits, smiles, and forged checks couldn't fix the fact that he hadn't slept in years and was running on pure anxiety and sugar packets. Even Carl, the guy chasing him, ends up offering him a job. Because at some point, even the best imposters either burn out or get absorbed into the system. As Carl said,
"You're just a kid."
And that's the final truth bomb. Being someone else can get you through a door, but staying there forever, that's a whole different game. If you don't quit, the mask becomes your skin, and eventually, even you forget what's underneath. So act like anyone. Learn the tricks. Play the game. Just remember, knowing when to drop the role might be the smartest move of all.